My boss told me to stop being friendly, to stop chatting, stop connecting, just hand off paperwork and go sit back down. So that's exactly what I did. And within 2 weeks, she was begging me to go back to normal. I'm a receptionist at a behavioral healthcare agency. 14 therapists, clinicians, case managers, all cycling through a busy office every single day. My job was to keep things moving, hand out assignments, manage the front. But somewhere along the way, I also became the heartbeat of the place. People would come in, we'd share a few minutes before the day started, maybe a laugh, maybe a quick check-in, and then we'd all get to work. More than a few of them had pulled me aside over the years and said something like, "Don't ever lose that energy. This place needs it." I didn't think much of it at the time. I thought I was just doing my job. I had no idea my director saw it completely differently. Here's the strange thing about her. She ran hot and cold. 1 month, we'd be totally in sync, genuinely getting along. The next, she was watching everything I did like she was building a case file on me. I never knew which version I'd get. That unpredictability wore on me in ways I didn't fully admit to myself. Then one afternoon, she called me into her office and closed the door. She told me I was being too social, too much talking, too many little side conversations. It was unprofessional, she said, and it was pulling me away from my actual responsibilities. She said I needed to limit myself strictly to greetings. That's it. Say hello, hand off the work, go back to my desk. I looked at her for a moment, then I smiled and said, "Understood. I'll do exactly that." She smiled back. She said that's all she wanted. She had no idea what she just set in motion. The next morning I came in, smiled at everyone, said good morning, and then I put my head down and got to work. When I had assignments to deliver, I walked to each office, handed them over, said what they were for. The moment anyone tried to chat, I cut it off politely. "Sorry, I gotta get back to my desk." A confused look, a slow nod, and I'd be gone. Day 1, day 2, day 3. By day 4, I noticed the energy in the office had shifted. The little moments that used to break up the morning, gone. The lightness, gone. People would glance at me on my way back to the front desk, and something in their faces was different. I kept smiling. I kept working. I didn't say a word about why. The second week is when it really started to crack. One by one, they started coming to my desk. Not with assignments, not with questions, just to check on me. "Hey, are you doing okay? You've seemed a little distant lately. I just want you to know my door is always open if something's going on. We're worried about you." I smiled at each of them. I thanked them for their kindness. I told them I was fine, just focused on my work. Then I went back to my desk, and all I could think was, she has no idea this is coming back to her. Week 3, my director called me into her office again. She asked me what was wrong. I said, "Nothing's wrong. My work is on time, assignments are going out, I'm keeping conversation to an absolute minimum. Exactly like you asked." She didn't say anything right away. She just looked at me. Then she told me the clinicians had come to her. They were concerned about me. They thought something was wrong. Maybe I was going through something difficult. Maybe depression. They'd been telling her all week that they wanted me to know their doors were open. 14 behavioral health professionals, worried about the receptionist. I let that land. I didn't fill the silence. Finally, she said, "Just keep the chats to a few minutes." And that was it. No real apology. No acknowledgement of what she'd asked me to do in the first place. Just a quiet walk back. Worded like a new instruction instead of a reversal. "Sure," I said. "No problem." I walked back to my desk. Said good morning to 2 people on the way. They both lit up like I'd been gone for a month. Here's what I took from all of it. The thing she'd called unprofessional was actually load-bearing. It was holding something together in that office that none of us had named. And when it disappeared, 14 people trained in mental health noticed within days. She thought she was correcting a distraction. Turns out she was correcting the culture. She just didn't know it until it was gone. I spent weeks carefully, deliberately making my job a nightmare. and my boss gave me a standing ovation for it. I work operations and maintenance on solar fields across the Midwest. My company handles routine and corrective work for the companies that own these sites. Inspections, repairs, swapping out damaged panels. Pretty physical, pretty technical, pretty straightforward. One of the less glamorous parts of the job is a ticketing system. Every task gets a ticket, a log of what we did, how long it took, which client we were doing it for. It's basically how we justify our invoices. A client isn't going to pay for 3 hours if we can't show them what filled those 3 hours. It's not complicated, it just requires some attention. And honestly, our crew was good at it. Then our VP retired, and the new guy came in swinging. We found out pretty fast that this VP had one obsession: tickets. He spent nearly 20 minutes of his company-wide introduction call on ticket management. 20 minutes. Not strategy, not safety, not anything about the actual work. Tickets. We weren't worried. Our documentation was solid. We figured he was just new, trying to make a mark, and he'd move on. He didn't move on. A few weeks later, he showed up at one of my sites while me and my tech were doing preventative maintenance on 4 inverters. Standard day. I'm setting up at the first inverter. My tech is at the parts container getting materials. I'm walking the area and I notice a nearby solar panel has a chip on it. Looks like a rock got kicked up by the wind. I take a photo, note the location, call my tech and ask him to grab a spare panel while he's already at the container. We finish the inverter, close that ticket, knock out the panel swap in about 20 minutes, close that ticket, and move on down the line. Clean, efficient, fully documented. At the end of the day, VP pulls me aside. He tells me I didn't manage my tickets correctly. I went through everything. 8 hours on site, 2 hours at each of 4 inverters, 20 minutes on the panel swap. Every minute covered. I genuinely didn't understand what he was pointing at. He explained it like this: the 5 minutes I spent walking over to look at that damaged panel, that time came out of the inverter ticket. My tech loading the replacement panel into his truck. That was also technically panel swap time, not inverter time. According to this VP, I should have stopped, logged out of the inverter ticket, opened a new ticket for the panel, documented my 5 minutes, then logged back into the inverter ticket. My tech should have done the same. Log out, log in, load the panel, log back out, log back into inverters for a 20-minute job on the same property at the same hourly rate for the same client. I swallowed every objection I had, told him I'd fix the tickets and do better going forward. And then I started planning. If he wanted granular, I was going to give him granular. Me and my tech went from roughly 3 to 5 tickets per day to close to 20. Walking between tasks and I spotted a piece of trash that blew in from the road. Stop everything. Open a ticket. Log the time. Close it. Resume the original ticket. My tech asked me a question about a separate job while I was mid-task. New ticket. 4 minutes. Closed. Broken zip tie on a cable bundle. That's a ticket now. 2 minutes. Documented. Answered a text from my supervisor. Ticket. 90 seconds. Every single interruption, every 2-minute task, every moment that technically existed outside the primary work order. All of it now had its own paper trail, just like he wanted. I figured one of 2 things would happen. Either he'd see the flood of busy work tickets and quietly walk it back, or upper management would flag the administrative overhead as a waste of time. I was wrong about both. At the next monthly crew lead meeting, the one with all 15 crew leads from across the country, VP did not walk it back. He celebrated it. He pulled up our ticket data and spent several minutes telling the entire company that my crew had set the new standard, that this was exactly the level of documentation he'd been asking for, that every other crew needed to come up to this level, immediately, no exceptions. Our 3 to 5 tickets a day, which had been perfectly adequate and nobody had ever questioned, were now the floor. 20 micro tickets a day was the expectation for everyone, 15 crews across the country, all of them now doing what we started doing as a joke. I genuinely thought I was being clever. The classic move, follow the rules so literally that the person who made them finally sees how ridiculous they are. What I forgot is that some people don't see the absurdity. Some people see exactly what they asked for and call it a win. The VP wasn't embarrassed. He was validated. And now I live in a world where I have to file a ticket every time I pick up a candy wrapper. Look, sometimes malicious compliance is a weapon. And sometimes you hand that weapon to exactly the wrong person and watch them knight you with it. He argued with 3 eye doctors, built his own prescription from scratch, spent 750 euros, put the glasses on, and couldn't see out of them. And we already knew that was going to happen. I'm a dispensing optician in France. It's not a job most people think about much. You come in, we fit you for glasses, you leave. But the training behind it is genuinely technical. Physiological optics, visual analysis, how the eye and the brain process competing signals. We can adapt a prescription when necessary. We just can't write one from scratch. That's the ophthalmologist's job. This story isn't mine. It belongs to a colleague of mine from back when I was still learning the trade. But I had a front row seat. A customer walked in carrying 3 separate prescriptions from 3 different ophthalmologists, 3 qualified specialists, 3 professional opinions. He hadn't come in to ask which one was best. He'd come in to explain which parts of each he wanted to combine into one. His own personal prescription, designed by him, for him. Now, there's a lot of room for minor variation between prescriptions. Ophthalmologists use slightly different equipment, slightly different methods. Small differences are normal, but this customer hadn't landed on a sensible middle ground. He'd cherry-picked the numbers he liked from each one and assembled something that made no clinical sense. The most alarming part was the addition. For those who've never worn progressive lenses, the addition is the extra magnifying power in the lower part of the lens, used for reading and close-up work. In nearly every single case, both eyes get the same addition. It's not a stylistic preference. It's how your visual system stays coordinated. Significant differences between eyes exist, but they're rare, and they're tied to specific medical conditions. This man had none of those conditions. What he wanted was one eye focused for about 67 centimeters, roughly desk distance, and the other focused for about 40 centimeters, which is closer to a book held in your hands. 2 different focal distances, one for each eye simultaneously. My colleague described it like walking with a stiletto heel on one foot and a flat shoe on the other. If your body isn't built for it, and almost no body is, you're going to have a bad time. My colleague explained this clearly, more than once. The customer had his answer ready. I'm a professional photographer, I know optics, just do what I tell you. There it is. My colleague is a licensed optician with formal training in visual science. Not a salesperson, not a technician, not someone handing over a product and hoping for the best. He was giving a professional recommendation. The customer heard it as an obstacle. My colleague did everything right. He warned the customer that the satisfaction guarantee would not apply. He documented his professional objection. He had the customer sign a form confirming he understood all of it and was proceeding against advice. The customer signed it. It'll work. I know what I'm doing. So my colleague did exactly what he was asked. The lenses were high-end progressives, custom made. The order came to about 750 euros, roughly $850. They arrived. The customer came in. My colleague fitted them. The man put them on. There was a pause. This is incredibly uncomfortable. I can't see properly. Yes, but that's not normal. Actually, it is. So, what are we going to do? My colleague's answer was 2 words. We? Nothing. The customer had received exactly what he ordered. The lenses had been made to his specification, precisely. They performed exactly the way everyone in that room, except him, had predicted they would. There was silence for a moment, the kind that happens when someone realizes the document they signed was not a formality. We did eventually offer him a discount on a replacement pair, made with a sensible prescription. It wasn't required. It was a gesture. There was something called a manufacturer adaptation allowance we could have used, a mechanism that exists to cover genuine dispensing errors, unusual medical outcomes, or legitimate prescription complications. It would have replaced the lenses at no cost to the customer. But it exists for problems that aren't the customer's fault. This wasn't a dispensing error. This wasn't a prescription complication. This was a man who had consulted 3 qualified ophthalmologists, rejected all 3 of their professional opinions, built his own prescription from pieces he liked the look of, overruled a trained optician who told him it was a bad idea, signed a document saying he understood the risks, and then acted surprised when the laws of physiological optics didn't make an exception for him. The lenses were perfect. That was the problem. Here's what I keep coming back to. Years later, expertise isn't the same as confidence. 3 ophthalmologists and 1 optician all told this man the same thing. He had more certainty than all of them combined. That certainty cost him €750 and a very uncomfortable afternoon. Knowing how a camera lens works and knowing how a human visual system works are not the same thing. One of those is glass and mathematics. The other is glass, mathematics, and a brain doing a complicated job it didn't sign up to explain to anyone.